So we're in the greenhouse today, and nothing gives colour through winter quite as much as this plant. This is a houseplant cyclamen, a florist cyclamen. It's actually a hybrid of Cyclamen persicum, and this is a fantastic plant to really cheer up yourself in the middle of the drab, boring winter. So if you want to avoid making the most common mistakes, then this is the video to watch. These are mistakes that I've made myself in the past, over the past few years, and I have collected them all together into groups and put them into subjects, and I'm going to go through all the different things that I've done wrong that you may well also do wrong, and hopefully you can avoid doing them wrong in the future. So let's get started. And we are in. Okay, so this one at the moment, it's actually looking a little bit bedraggled because I haven't watered it. I've made one of the first key errors. I've let it wilt. And the best thing to do for that is to water it, of course, but we'll come to that because we're going to start with another topic. So we're going to start with temperature, which also can actually lead them to wilt. So the first mistake is trying to grow them in a room that is fit for humans. In other words, a room roughly around about 18 to 22. I think most people tend to get it around 22 degrees Celsius. If you do that, then you're going to trigger them into dormancy. They will wilt. These are plants that grow in the Eastern Mediterranean, and they're used to being dormant during the hot summer months, and then they come alive during the winter months. So in actual fact, the temperatures that they need are around about 15 degrees Celsius. That's the optimum temperature. They will go lower. Mine go down to about 12 degrees Celsius. So first key mistake, put them in a cooler room in your house. Don't try to grow them in the room that you live in. Okay, so second mistake, still to do with temperature, is putting them in a sunny spot behind glass. They do not want to be in the sun behind glass. Yes, during the winter months in the natural habitat, they may well be out in the open. They may well be in woods and forests where they are deciduous trees and they don't have any leaves on. That's fine, but when they're behind glass in a house, it's just too much for them. Please keep them away from that, and that way you will avoid them wilting. They can recover from a wilt, but what will happen is over time it stresses them, as you've just seen from mine there. So try not to let them get to the point where they wilt. Okay, so next up is watering, and one mistake that people make, this is the third one, is leaving them standing in water. Yes, you can bottom water them, but you must make sure that the water has disappeared within a couple of hours. If the water hasn't disappeared, then of course you are going to be at risk of drowning those roots. If they've taken up all that they can and it's still wet at the bottom of that little tray that you have at the bottom, then empty it out and make sure that that can dry out at the bottom. The other thing to be careful of is if you are bottom watering them, then make sure that you know what is at the bottom of that pot. Many people, especially in the UK, put drainage at the bottom of the pot. They may put some stones, some crocks. If you do that and then try and put a tray underneath and bottom water it, then your plant's not going to get any water. It's not going to work its way up. And if it does, there may be one or two roots that work its way down, but it's not going to be enough and it may still wilt. So what I do is when I pot them up, I put some moss at the bottom there, so that if I do want to bottom water them, it will pass through and take it up. And the moss is also good to use because it will dry out if you leave it. So the fourth one was to not let them wilt. The fifth one is about feeding them. And another mistake that people make is to not feed them. Yes, they've got a lot of nutrition in that bulb, everything they need to bloom, but once the blooms have died down, you need to continue feeding them. As long as they are still in leaf and as long as they are still in full growth, then feed them. A general purpose fertilizer will do. I like to use slow release fertilizers just because it's a nice, easy thing to do. You pop it in the top and then you forget about it for a month. That is something that they do need to have all through the growing season, and then when it comes round to the summer season, when they go dormant, they've already got everything they need in that bulb to take them through the dormant period, and then come winter time they will bloom for you again. So next one up is repotting. So the main mistake people make for this is either not repotting them at all, just leaving them year after year, or they repot them into too large a pot. So even if you're going to keep them in the same pot, it's a good idea to take them out and to knock that soil away and to actually repot them again with some fresh media. They don't want to be in the same pot year on year on year. I'd say roughly about 2 years is a good time to repot them again. So one mistake is not to do it at all. The other mistake is to put them in too large a pot, because they do want to be really tight in that pot. They don't want to have lots of wet media around the roots. Next up is deadheading. They do want to be deadheaded. So once the blooms turn into a really tight ball and start to spiral their way downwards, then you can simply snip off the whole bloom stalk right the way back to the base. If you don't do that, then the plant is going to set more and more seed and it's going to go into dormancy early, and obviously you want to avoid that for as long as you can. So another mistake people make is to expect the very small minis, as they're sometimes known, to go through dormancy. In my experience, the very small tubers just don't make it through dormancy unless you can get that tuber to a certain size. It's worth a try, of course, but in my experience they just don't do it. They're artificially brought into bloom when they're really too immature. So make sure that you've got a reasonable sized tuber before you even attempt it. And of course, talking about dormancy, another mistake people make is throwing them out, not knowing that they are actually perennials and they can go year after year after year. Totally forgotten what number we're up to now. Another mistake is light, putting them into the shade. They actually do need bright light, as bright as you can, but as we've said previously, not direct sun. Shade will trigger dormancy. Okay, and the last mistake I'm going to show you today is to do with this plant actually. Now you can just about see how the leaves are puckered there, and you can also see that this doesn't have any blooms on it. The reason is they are very prone to cyclamen mite, also known as tarsonomid mite. Now this year I've only got one plant that's got the tarsonomid mite, and what I did was I've sprayed it once with a systemic. They don't love systemics, but if you only do it once, it tends not to cause too much damage. And you can just see in the middle there, see the new leaves? These leaves have since emerged since I sprayed it with a systemic. So you're looking out for those puckered leaves. You will not see a tarsonomid mite. You will see aphids, but you won't see a tarsonomid mite even with a hand lens. So be aware, if you get that kind of symptom, then that is a mistake to avoid. Give it a spray and it'll be fine. That should still have time to bloom with a bit of luck, and if it doesn't, I'll just try and keep it going as long as I can until it goes back into dormancy again, and hopefully it'll be better next year. Now I hope that covers all the main mistakes that people make, because I've made all those before. Now what I did was collected all the questions that people have asked me over the years about cyclamen, and I put them all in one single video, and that video is up there. So if you're not completely satisfied with all the answers that I've given you today, take a look at that video and improve your cyclamen growing. And for now, I'll see you on the next one. Bye.